Hey everybody, it's Joe from greenlightsound.com, and today we're going to take a look at a quick tip for getting around a really common mixing situation, and that is combining two different bass parts into one cohesive bass sound. Often when you're mixing actual bass parts played by a bass player through an amp, you get two copies of the bass part. One is the DI, the direct input copy, and one is the amped up copy. There's a couple reasons for this. First of all, the DI signal is a cleaner signal, and the amp signal tends to have a little bit more of the amp character to it. You could always reamp the DI signal too, so it gives you some options in that way. You could use the DI signal on its own as well, depending on the song and depending on what you're going for in the mix. So the first thing we're going to do is hear each of these. Here's the DI signal by itself. And here's the amp signal. So you can tell the DI signal has a little bit more of the low end in it and doesn't have quite the upper mid-range or bite that the amp signal has. But you kind of want both. Here's the problem. When I combine them, I have both soloed up now. I'm actually going to bring the amp's fader up. Listen to what happens. The bass disappears. And the reason that happens is because of phase. The DI signal in a bass part, or any part really that you're DIing, is going to come in sooner than the amp signal will, because the DI is going directly into an interface or a console. The amp has to go through the signal chain of a preamp, microphone, back, so you have a little bit of delay. It's not much, but it's enough to cause phase issues. So if we really zoom in on these two bass parts, you'll see exactly what I mean. So you can see the negative phase here with the positive phase down here. The amp part, that's going to cause a lot of comb filtering or phase cancellation, and that's where the bass part kind of disappears when I bring that amp fader up. This one seems like it's going to be really easy to fix. They're often not quite this way, but since the negative phase and positive phase here are occurring at almost the exact same time, I can just flip the phase on one of them, and that'll fix the problem. There we go, an easy way to fix it. But if we want to combine the best elements of each signal, there's an even better way of doing this. I'm going to grab an EQ here. I'm going to drag it onto the amp track. I'm going to put in a high-pass filter, type in I want it about 100 hertz. So I'm cutting out all that low end. I want the slope to be pretty steep, 36 dB per octave. So I'm cutting out really everything below 100 hertz. It's not in the signal at all anymore. And I'm going to move this to natural phase mode. You could use linear phase if you wanted to really get rid of any artifacts, phase artifacts that would happen from having a sharp cutoff here, but natural phase works pretty well. Then I'm going to copy that over to the DI part, but I'm just going to flip it over. Instead of doing a high pass filter, I'm going to do a low pass filter. So on the DI part, only the low end is coming through and none of the top end is coming through at all. You can see exactly what the two are doing here. So again, my DI part, only low end, my amp part, only high end. And this is going to fix the phase issue because we no longer have any overlapping frequencies. The stuff that's coming through on the amp part is being cut out of the DI part. The stuff that's coming through on the DI part is being cut out of the amp part. So they can't cancel each other because they're not happening at the same time. Here's what this sounds like. As an added bonus, we get the best of both worlds here. We get the character of the amp part, that upper mid-range bite, and we get the clean, solid low end of the DI part. So you're getting both the character and the clean low end, which is really going to help in the mix. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, why can't we just flip the phase and combine them? Rather than have the low end from the DI and the upper signals from the amp part, why can't we just combine them with the phase flipped? Well, here's what that would sound like. Now that's certainly a passable bass part, but the problem is all of those low mids from the DI part are building up with what's also there in the amp part, and it's just getting too beefy in that range. Listen to it again. Whereas when we do it with our EQ, it's not getting overpowering in that low mid range. It's a little softer, but we can always fix that with compression too later on. We're not getting all those additive frequencies that are going to overwhelm the low end of the mix. The last step I like to do in doing this is add a multiband compressor to compress the low end of the signal even more. So we get all that amp character and we get a really clean and contained low end of the bass part. I pulled up Wave C4 here. You can use any multiband compressor you want. We're actually going to bypass the upper bands completely and go with only the low band here. We're going to sweep it up to just past 100. I'm going to pull the threshold down. I'm going to push the gain up, and it's really going to compress and squash that low end, but keep it at a nice consistent level. So it's taking that low and it's compressing it, but I'm bringing the gain up to level match. Without it, you hear the low end sounds different. It's not as tight. And engaged again. So again, we get the best of both worlds, that really clean DI signal with the low end compressed, getting that good full roundness in the bottom, all that character from the amp signal as well. And we took care of any phase issues by eliminating overlap, by cutting out all the top end out of the DI signal and all the bottom end from the DI. So there we have it, a really easy way to combine our DI and amp bass signals to create a nice, cohesive bass sound in your mix. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already so we can keep you in the loop as to what's coming up next, and I'll see you in the next one.